In early 1945, near Wereth in eastern Belgium, villagers lead a patrol from the United States 99th Infantry Division through deep snow to a ditch at the edge of a pasture. 11 African-American soldiers of the 333rd Field Artillery Battalion lie their bodies rigid in the cold. Boots have been pulled off and socks stripped away. Fingers are shattered. Bayonet wounds mark chests, thighs and backs. Skulls show heavy fractures. Each man carries close-range bullet wounds to the head. The battalion that manned 155mm howitzers on the Ardennes front now lists these 11 as killed in action. 8 weeks earlier, in mid-December 1944, the 333rd Field Artillery Battalion has its 12 155mm howitzers dug into frozen ground near Schönberg, east of the First Time. Our river. Service battery is parked west of the river with ammunition, fuel and kitchens. Batteries A, B and C occupy forward pits under the control of VIII Corps artillery. Neighbouring infantry regard the sector as quiet and secondary. German propaganda has long claimed that black troops cannot fight. German units that have marched under American barrages in France already know that American artillery is dangerous no matter who serves the guns. Before dawn, on the first day of the German offensive, enemy shells begin to walk across roads, gun positions and village streets around Schönberg. Within minutes, the 333rd answers. 12 howitzers fire together from their pits. Crews ram heavy, high-explosive shells and powder charges into the open breach, swing the block shut and haul the lanyards. Muzzles flash over the snow. The guns send steel into German assembly areas and road columns pushing west out of the forests. By the morning of 17th December, German infantry and tanks have seized the bridge at Schönberg and blocked the main road toward Street VIII. Orders reach the battalion to pull most guns back across the Our. Battery C and part of Service Battery remain east of the river to cover retreating regiments of the 106th Infantry Division. Their howitzers continue firing at rapid rate while German armour and infantry close in. Distance on the firing tables no longer matters. Between the guns and the foremost German vehicles, there is only a few hundred yards of open snow. In the days that follow, the 333rd will count about half its men as killed or captured during the Battle of the Bulge, 17th December 1944 midday. German tanks reach the first battery positions east of Schönberg. Shells strike trails and wheels at short range. Crews load and fire, while steel splinters whip through the pits. 155mm howitzers are smashed by direct hits or abandoned only after the last primers are pulled. Men serve the remaining pieces until ammunition trailers blaze behind them. Survivors fight rearward with rifles and carbines taken from fallen officers and infantrymen. Snow muffles the clatter of tracks and the sharper crack of small arms fire. Roads clog with burning vehicles and retreating columns. Battery C and portions of Service Battery fire under ever closer observation shells, bursting among German infantry already near the wire of their positions until the trails are overrun. In the opening phase of the battle, the 333rd loses 9 155mm howitzers and dozens of vehicles. 222 enlisted men and 6 officers disappear from the morning reports, within a few days counted as killed or captured. Along the lanes leading west, knocked-out trucks and weapons carriers mark the route of withdrawal. Whatever the guns' theoretical range on the firing tables, effective distance on 17th December shrinks to a few hundred yards of open snow between muzzle and advancing armour. Small groups break away through the forests. 11 soldiers slip away from a prisoner column moving east under guard. They turn west into deepening snow rather than march toward German cages. Boots sink to the knee with every step. The air stays bitterly cold after sunset. They carry no maps, only the memory of briefings that place American lines somewhere beyond the next ridge. Night closes. Wind cuts through overcoats stiffened with ice. The 11 keep moving northwest, guided by distant artillery flashes that still bloom red against low cloud. Each flash means friendly guns remain in action somewhere ahead. They follow the glow for hours across empty fields and through black pine stands. 17th December 1944, later that afternoon. After 10 miles of drifting snow, the 11 reach Wereth, a cluster of farmhouses crouched against the wind. Smoke rises straight from chimneys, No shellfire has touched the hamlet yet. Matthias Langer opens his door to strangers in frozen uniforms. His family brings them into the warmth and shares food. Boots come off at last. Cold, soaked socks are pulled away and feet are rubbed back to feeling. Warmth returns slowly. The men speak in low voices about guns left burning near Schönberg and comrades last seen at the open breach. Langer listens in silence and lets them rest in his house. For the first time since leaving their positions, they are under a solid roof with a hot meal behind them. A neighbour watches from across the lane. Her husband serves in a German uniform somewhere to the east. She slips away while plates are cleared from the table. Headlamps appear on the road not long after. A German patrol arrives at the gate. Boots crash on frozen cobblestones. Orders ring sharp in German. 11 men file into the yard with hands raised. Rifles and carbines remain stacked inside. None of the soldiers reach for them. An officer gestures toward the field beyond the last house. The column moves off into the dark across hard-crusted snow. Gunshots sound soon after, single shots first, then bursts. Screams carry back on the wind and die quickly. No gun of the 333rd will fire again from these 11 pairs of hands. Bodies lie where they fall. Snow begins again during the night, gentle and steady, covering bloodshell, casings and footprints in the same white shroud. Villagers hear everything from behind shuttered windows. No one steps outside until morning, when only smooth drifts and tracks leading away remain. 18th December 1944. Survivors of the 333rd Field Artillery Battalion reach American lines west of the hour. They bring only a handful of serviceable howitzers and the clothes on their backs. In the days that follow, morning reports show 6 officers, including the battalion commander, and 222 enlisted men lost to death or captivity. 9 155mm howitzers, along with dozens of trucks and weapons carriers, lie wrecked or captured between Schönberg and the river. Orders send the remnants south toward Bastogne. Men march through snow-clogged roads already crowded with retreating units and supply columns. The cold bites deeper with every mile. Frostbite threatens those who had already stood too long at frozen gun trails. Near Bastogne, they link up with the 969th Field Artillery Battalion, another African-American 155mm unit ordered into the same tightening ring. Together, the merged batteries occupy positions east and south of the town. Their medium howitzers register on road junctions, villages and ridgelines the Germans must use to close the trap. Ammunition stocks are limited and fire missions are chosen carefully. When shells are committed, they fall in coordinated salvos that meet German columns at the critical turns on the map, rather than at the edge of the guns' tables. German armor probes daily. The guns answer every urgent call that ammunition allows. Crews work in greatcoats stiff with ice, breath freezing on the breech before the next round seats. Powder smoke hangs low under the constant overcast. For several days the sky stays closed to aircraft. Artillery becomes the only immediate support that infantry in the snow can count on when tanks and grenadiers move again. Losses among the combined artillerymen at Bastogne remain far lower than in the first 4 days around Schönberg, but the fire they deliver is no less decisive. Bastogne holds. When the weather finally breaks later in December and aircraft begin to range over the salient observers, see fresh craters and burned-out vehicles along every avenue of approach to the town. German schedules and fuel plans have already come apart under the weight of steel delivered by units that propaganda once dismissed, including a battered battalion whose black gunners have already paid with more than half their number. Early 1945. Patrols from the 99th Infantry Division follow villagers to the pasture outside Wereth. Snow has thinned enough to reveal 11 shapes still lying where they fell. Bodies are frozen solid. Bayonet gashes show dark against grey skin. Fingers point skyward in permanent rigour. The army investigation records broken bones, bayonet wounds to the head fingers cut off, and bullet holes fired downward into skulls. In the spring of 1945, the 333rd receives enough replacements to rebuild on paper. New men learn the drill on the same 155mm howitzers that survived the Ardennes fighting. The battalion's lineage would later be carried forward administratively in other artillery formations, while many of its original gunners remained missing from the rolls. 10th June 1945, the battalion is inactivated in Germany. Colours are cased. Men transfer to other units or to occupation duties or board ships for home. The heavy work of demobilization begins. For decades, the field at Wereth holds only memory. On the 50th anniversary of the massacre in 1994, Hermann Langer places a small cross at the corner of the pasture where the bodies lay. The villagers tend it through winters of rain and frost. In the following years, Belgian citizens and American supporters research the men and their unit contact families where they can and raise funds for a permanent memorial. Stone replaces wood in 2004. A low memorial rises beside the ditch granite slabs carved with the 11 names and an inscription honouring all African American soldiers who served in Europe. The hamlet that once watched from behind shuttered windows now hosts annual ceremonies. Henri Chapelle American Cemetery accepts 7 of the dead beneath white marble headstones. 4 others are returned after the war to small churchyards across the United States. Each man is posthumously awarded the Purple Heart. Combat records of the 333rd from Normandy through the Ardennes enter official histories. Post-war German studies and officer memoirs single out American artillery as the greatest obstacle to success in the Battle of the Bulge. None of those pages mention race. Old propaganda, tracts yellow and crumble. The battalion that saw about half its men killed or captured in the opening days of the German offensive stands as a permanent contradiction. Decades later, a former Waffen-SS officer, Rudolf von Ribbentrop, recalled that in Normandy, the Americans threw everything at us, particularly artillery. It put everything that we had previously undergone into the shade. That judgment from a front-line German officer matches the post-war studies that ranked American artillery as one of the decisive obstacles and quietly undercuts the earlier propaganda that dismissed black American units as incapable. The distance that finally mattered was not on a firing table. It was 10 miles through snow, from shattered gun pits to a farmhouse door that opened and then closed on 11 men whose story would be buried in ice and silence for half a century. 1948. President Truman signs Executive Order 9981. The document orders equality of treatment and opportunity in the armed forces and begins the formal end of segregation in uniform, even though implementation will take years. The record of units like the 333rd Field Artillery Battalion sits in filing cabinets and unit histories while the army changes around them. More than 1 million African Americans wore uniform during the war. Most served in quartermaster companies, truck regiments, labor battalions, and other support units. Only a minority served in combat formations that carried rifles or crude guns at the front. The 333rd belonged to that smaller number. Post-war German towns present a different picture. African American soldiers on occupation duty walk streets where children offer apples and old men nod without the averted eyes common in parts of the American South. Nazi racial charts have been burned for fuel. The same sergeants who once loaded 100-pound shells under fire now direct traffic at crossroads once marked for conquest. 1960s. Civil rights marches pass, recruiting stations displaying photographs of integrated platoons in Korea. Veterans of the 333rd watch from sidewalks medals hidden under coats. They remember Schönberg snow and Bastogne ice, but speak little. By the late 1940s, the army has already closed its war crimes file on the killings at Wereth. Investigators gathered testimony confirmed that the 11 men had been tortured and shot after surrendering, and then ended the case without naming individual perpetrators or bringing any charges. The file remained classified and largely untouched for decades, while families grieved in private. Later, historical work suggested that the killers were likely drawn from elements of the 1st SS Panzer Division in the Ardennes, but no one was ever tried for the murders. 1994. A member of the Langer family erects a small stone cross in the field where the 11 fell. Local memory, never completely silent, takes visible shape again. Early 2000. Belgian citizens and American supporters raise money for a permanent monument. In May 2004, a stone memorial is dedicated at Wereth, carved with the 11 names and a line for all African American soldiers who served in Europe. 2 years later, veterans in Massachusetts dedicate the first memorial to the Wereth 11 on United States soil. Additional markers appear in other American towns in the years that follow. The wooden cross at Wereth stands no longer. Granite endures. Manuals for the 155mm howitzer still print its maximum range at roughly 16,000 yards. With full charge, a familiar figure in artillery tables. The distance that mattered in this story was shorter, measured in 11 frozen bodies, one battalion that lost more than half its strength in the opening days of the German offensive, and the gap between propaganda and the reality German soldiers faced whenever American guns, black or white, found their range.